It is a real joy to have Jeff Reep joining us again today. Jeff is with Cedarville University. He has spoken at our events for years, always has just really, really great sessions. So if you haven't heard him yet, make sure you hear him this year at Dayton, Ohio, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, or Branson, Missouri. He will be at all of those events, but he is definitely a man you want to get to know. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Well, I am always glad to talk to you. I always learn something when I talk to you, so that makes it even more fun. So, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself for those that may not have heard you speak before? Where are you located? What are you doing now?
Mhm. Yeah, my background is I coached college basketball for 22 years, made the career change into career services. Sounds sort of crazy, but what do? I career coach. I'm out recruiting people to come to campus to meet our students, and I still continue to teach in the School of Allied Health. Pretty much the same things I've done my whole career. I'm a certified career coach. I really love what I do. It's just, I just feel I have an opportunity to be a tiny little part of what God's doing in individuals' lives by
Hmm.
helping encourage them and giving them some tools. And so I just, again, enjoy what I do and thankful to be a little part of what God's doing in individuals' lives.
Well, that is amazing, and you are kind of based there at Cedarville University. I know in Ohio, so really close to our Dayton event. How long have you been at Cedarville doing this?
Well, I've actually been at Cedarville for almost 30 years. I've been in career services about 25 years. It's been, we're located in Southwest Ohio. We have just a little over 4,000 students. And it just, it's a great situation for an individual to come and to grow in their faith. Homeschools are very welcome here. Our president is a homeschool dad, student life president or vice president, student homeschools their children, a lot of faculty. So it's a situation where individuals are going to be received very welcomed here, and it's a great place where you can get a good education, and at the same time, there's a real emphasis and being very intentional on encouraging
Hmm.
students to grow spiritually.
That is, I think, what every parent in Teach Them Diligently is looking for. They want excellent education for their kids, but they also want that continued discipleship. And so, David and I have been so blessed to partner with you guys for so long, because we know that is exactly what you're offering up there. So, I appreciate the years of partnership. Today, though, I really want to pick your brain about what you're really good at, and that is helping our young people kind of navigate their way through. I saw that the statistics that I think that you shared with me, 66% of students change majors and 40% of grads wish that they had chosen differently. That is stunning. What can you tell us about that? And as parents, is that something that we should be concerned about or just accept as normal?
No, I think that's something that I don't think it's ever too early to start to try to just help our students explore, different possibilities and making informed decisions. I think as a homeschool dad, I mean, it's a situation where I can take my child with me if I'm going to the airport, if I'm going shopping, if I'm going to buy a car, and then just constantly ask those questions. Do you think that's something you would like to do?
Hmm.
If you're going to look at a new car or something, and I to say, would you like to be a salesperson here? Would you like to own a place like this? Would you like to design cars? Would you like to be a mechanic? And so I think as we take our children with us, and that's the neat thing about homeschooling, you're growing them up into the adult
Right.
world. And then even then when we're not around and they go to places or they see something on TV or something, different situations, now they start asking that question, yeah, would I like to do that? So I think that's
Hmm.
really key. It is just important to get started early. I think it's important to just really pray about the future and where God wants them. God says there's safety in a multitude of counselors. I think
Yeah.
it's very important to ask people for advice. I always say advice. I feel is like a golden word.
Hmm.
You go up and ask somebody for help or their contact. Sometimes a wall starts building up. But if you go up to somebody and say, I've been thinking about what advice would you give me? Well, first off, you're going to honor that person,
Right.
and then if they can help you, there's a pretty good chance they will. And if they know somebody that can help you, they'll probably give you that person's contact information. And so you stop and think, what just happened? They got what they wanted. They never really asked for it. They honored that person, and they've done what God's told them to do. So
Mm.
I think, praying about it, just asking people for advice, get as much information as you can, explore different options, I think are some of the starting points for that.
Well, yeah. And as you were talking, I thought one of the real benefits of homeschooling our kids is we get to know them so much better. We get to see how they learn, what really excites them, all of these things. And so, both conversationally as well as strategically and point like asking those questions that you were saying, but as we're getting to know our kids better, we're able to really just kind of dive in. Hey, I think you'd be really good at that. I think that your love of X would really enhance if you were to do something like this. And to just kind of engage in conversations like that, I think is so helpful to help our kids start to think outside of, I guess, just kind of a small view, until you're able to kind of back up and see a bigger world, you have a really small view of
Mhm.
opportunity.
Yeah.
But as parents, we're able to really kind of enlarge their idea of what's possible and really start pointing them by noting stuff that we see in them. I see your love of math and of logic and
Mhm.
lining up. Have you ever thought about engineering or whatever it is?
Mhm.
And a really personal approach. I think that we have a pretty unique opportunity because we get to know our kids so well most of the time.
Absolutely. When I visit with a student and they're debating about different majors and that, one of the questions I always will ask is, what if you talk to your parents about it? What do they say? Because I said, stop and think, who knows you long, has known you longer than anybody?
Hmm.
Who has your best interest at heart more than anybody else? I said, if your parents are believers, then they're probably going to want you to be where God wants you. And even
Right.
if they're unbelievers, they probably want you to be happy. And so so they've seen you in different situations and that type of thing. And like I had 5 boys that we homeschooled, and if they came to me like as they got older and said, Dad, what do you think I should do? Sometimes I might be, well, what does God want you to do? Those type of answers. And but if they just a tip, I think, on one perspective from a dad, if they came and said, hey, what do you think about engineering or athletic training or social work or that type of thing, that would really open me up, to
Yeah.
say,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
hey, I've seen you do this, and boy, you really enjoyed that, or remember you had to do that, and you just tolerate it, and there would be a
Mhm.
lot of that in this type of position. So just to really, try to just, I would just encourage students, to ask their parents about a specific position, because I think as parents, we want to raise them and train them to help them make that decision. So they're make that, and if they make a good decision, then that just helps them make the next decision.
Right.
And if they make the decision and it doesn't go great, then they can learn from it on the next decision. And so, but as parents, I never felt like I wanted to make that decision for them, because if it's a good decision and then they're confronted with the next decision, then it's like, well, I never really made that one, that my
Yeah.
parents did. Or if it didn't turn out great, then I didn't make that decision. My parents made it.
Mhm.
So it's just helping them, I think, and guiding them and putting some boundaries where now they can make the decision and and make informed decisions, and be where God wants them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very easy pit to fall into as a parent to um to see something in your child and push them so hard that they just kind of go along complying, submitting, being,
Mhm.
but you're actually stepping in instead of allowing them to find their own footing and launch out and make those grown-up decisions, because we want to be raising our children with the ability to think critically, think biblically, and launch out on their own. We are adults. We're not raising children
Mhm.
to grow beyond that. And it's very to not let go of that control, I think far too often.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, I never wanted to make decisions for them. I wanted to help them make decisions. I didn't want them to have my convictions. I wanted them to have their own convictions,
Absolutely.
because, when they're in college, grad school, military, in the workplace, internships, I want them to know what they believe and why they believe it and be able to articulate what they believe. And those have become, they become their convictions. And so just helping them to, like, just like what you're saying, we're helping them to grow into adults. I mean, the goal is not just to have well-behaved little children. The
Right.
goal is to have godly and mature and wise adults.
Amen. Amen. Well, when you're looking at this decision, I imagine that in your role, especially, that you see people who have either gotten themselves in a situation where they've kind of frittered away a couple of years going down a path that they don't really want to be on, or they get to the very end and like or you noted before, there's like 40% that wish that they weren't at the end field. So, how are people generally approaching this decision and how, I guess I want to tell parents what is wrong, like how people are wrong, so that they can avoid those pitfalls and really focus on doing it right.
Yeah. I'd say one of the big things I really try to encourage students is try to start with the end in mind. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, I may not even necessarily know what it is, but I say if you could say today that you love the Lord, you trust him, he's your treasure, your delight, your satisfaction. If that is true, then I would say, what do you desire to do? Because if this is true, then I think those desires will line up here. Now I say, granted, we're always fighting fleshly desires, but
Yeah.
overall, if I have a desire to do something, then I would say start moving toward it. And like I had a student one time, and she came in and she wanted to go to Harvard Law School, and she was a sophomore. And I said, okay, here's a Cedarville alum, went to Harvard Law School. He'll be happy to talk to you. I said, why don't you contact Harvard Law School and say, what do you look for, fellowships, admission, those type things. And if they say this, and this, I said, now you have 3 years to do this, and this. So the day you apply, your application shows up, they look at it and say, oh yeah, we look for this, let's keep talking to her. All right. I told her that day, I said, what's your other option? Just wander through college with wish, chance, hope, and luck you do something somebody wants. Somebody says this, you see something online, you see something on TV. Why would I not just see what they want and then be moving? Now you want to be open, as you move, and if God leads you a different direction, then I think what you've done in your past is not going to be lost. The Lord's going to use it there. So I just think that's important to just identify something. So drop Harvard Law School and just put whatever. If it's a firefighter, an accountant, an educator, whatever it is, find out what they're looking for. What's the job requirements? I say, do you want to do those things? And I think students can do that through college and even start in high school. They can start doing those things, get exposed to situations. I had one student that did like a Speedway Super America 7-Eleven, has their international headquarters was just north of our of Cedarville here. And every student that went there, I talked to, they loved it. He said the culture was great, loved the work. It was fantastic. I had one student come back and all he did was gripe and complain about the entire summer. And you know what happened? The next semester, he changed his major to education.
Huh.
If he hadn't had that experience, graduated with an accounting degree, got some high-paying corporate accounting job, he could be on that fast track to that 65 to 85% of Americans who did not, don't like what they do. So
Yeah.
I think, getting that exposure, seeing what's out there, looking at job descriptions, looking at job requirements, and then be moving toward something and then being open to God's leading and direction.
I want to really park there because you're talking about such an intentionality in the way that you are directing your life towards the end goal, and that's so important for our kids, but it's also, I think, really really important and very overlooked for families in general. Like it's easy to have all of these big decisions and get really really scared about high school and then sending them off to college and all of these things. Whereas if you are just intentional in the way that you're praying and the way that you are organizing your life towards those next things,
Mhm.
how easy those transitions can actually be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's very true. And the whole, like we said, the whole purpose is to grow them up to adults, not to have them, relate well to other 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
And and that's I've always said, let's invite them up into our world, help them to be exposed to different things. And even in my situation, when I was in college, I wanted to be a high school basketball coach. And it was cold and calculated. I played 4 years of basketball, stayed, coached the JV team, got more classes to add to my teaching credential. Then all of a sudden I was heading in that direction. Then all of a sudden I had an opportunity to coach college basketball as a grad assistant. I never ever again wanted to coach high school basketball. I did that for 22 years, learning and developing the skills that I'm using today. You know, and I believe I'm where God wants me to be. But if you'd have told me back when I was in high school or college that I was going to be the director of career services, I mean, after I got done laughing at you, I'd say, "What in the world do they do?" But but it's interesting how it's like almost the Lord said, "Okay, follow this high school coaching thing. Draw you to the point where you can see the college coaching." And
Mm,
now it drew me to the point where now I can, I'm the director of career services. But I don't think anything I did in those different stages was at loss. And how
right.
all the things here built upon what I'm doing today. So I just think that, that moving, making informed decisions, crying out to the Lord for wisdom, and I tell students, obviously, pray about it. Many of them are praying about it. I said, one thing, if you're not, pray specifically, Lord, who do I need to talk to?
Mm.
Bring people back to my memory, bring people across my path. And then we go, like I just mentioned, then ask them for advice, like I mentioned earlier. And you're going to honor them and do what God's told you to do.
Yeah, and as parents, we have such a great opportunity to take the experiences and the circumstances that God has given us and help our children see the thread that we can see in our rearview mirror. We didn't know it,
Mhm.
but to use that to teach them what it looks like to trust in real time, because you can trust that God is weaving something so much better than you ever imagined. And that's just a really powerful discipleship opportunity that we have with our. You talk about five essential questions that students should ask universities about career transition services.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on those questions and tell us why they're so important?
Okay, I think different people are going to be looking for different things. I think one thing to consider is does the university value career services? Do they, because every university is spending tons of money to recruit students.
Yeah.
But what are they doing once they're there or after graduation? So I think that's a fair question to ask. How do I, if I'm a parent going to a university, 2-year school, 4-year school, whatever I'm going to, um, then one thing I can ask the question is where's your career services located at? All right. And if it's located in the back of the campus on the fourth floor or in the basement somewhere, well, the university doesn't really value that. Another question would be is what type of staff do you have? How many people do you have in the career offices? What are their credentials? Are they certified resume writers, career coaches, online profile experts? What are they investing into those people? Into the students. So I think that's those are some really good questions to ask as you're looking. I think is also I would maybe ask who comes to your campus to recruit, because everybody has a brochure with their superstars, as we do too. But the question is how many people pay to come meet the students is a much better indication of what people how people value the students that are there. So I think that's another really valuable thing. What type of grad schools are they getting into? Are they prepared for that? So I think those are things. What are they doing with helping students to identify different options within major? I think many times, I think God has an individual at the right school. Probably most times has them in the right major, but I think they're totally unaware of all the different things they can do with that major. And
Mhm.
so to really explore and see what those options are and then get those opportunities. And I think even as a high school student, they can start that process now. It's not something even in college that they can start doing. And so I think just finding out what's going on in the school. Are they helping? Like, we have a career assessment test that we provide for our students. It's not God, it's not going to tell them what to do, but what it does is it gives them opportunities to start exploring and see what they can do with different majors. And the occupational outlook handbook put out by the Department of Labor, and you can go on there and anything you can dream of. It's going to be on the United States Department of Labor. It's going to give you the government outlook on it. It's going to give you the work environment. Then it's going to give you all kinds of things that are related to that. And so, again, just taking that time to really explore. So, I think, is the career services valued? Who comes to campus to recruit? What are they doing to help students in this process of determining? Because a lot of students, when they show up, a lot of them are thinking, Uncle Bob was cool and he did some ability, he had some job, and I want to be like him. And they've never really thought through,
Right.
how am I wired? How am I gifted? Because some students honestly could sit in a cubicle for 40 hours a week for 40 years and love it. Some sit in that cubicle for about 40 minutes and they'd be clawing at the wall. So
Exactly.
didn't matter how much money they were making or the prestige they had. It's finding those gifts and then utilizing those gifts, I think, are all some things that are really important as they're looking at different places.
Yeah. Well, and I had never thought about several of those, specifically as you were talking about how career services is valued. I thought that makes so much sense. You laid it out, but I had never ever thought about that. And as you were talking, I was thinking back to I entered kind of that hub building there at Cedarville, and you guys are right there in the middle of everything, front and center. And it makes so much sense why you would be there after hearing what you had to say. So I appreciate you laying that out. That was super insightful. Um, every
I think another thing too is just when you visit a 2-year school, 4-year trade school, whatever you're looking at, is just saying what services do they provide.
Yeah, yeah,
Most people are going to have that. And then I mentioned as far as the people that recruit, and I mean, we have this last past year we had just under 500 employers came to campus to career fairs, and over 600 employers came on campus to recruit. And I
hmm,
mean, we're talking about Boeing and Northrop Grumman and the FBI and Honda, and I mean, major corporations. And so a lot of universities with, 4,000 students, they get several schools together, go get a convention center, and then van people over. These people are coming to our campus.
wow,
And so I think that gives a good indication of the type of programs we have, the way the students are prepared. And then the other thing I think is really important too, as is the career outcomes. What
hmm,
they do is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, they do what's called the First Destination Survey. That's where they take 6 to 8 months after graduation and where are your students in that window. So if I find out that somebody had a job in January and I didn't know it in December, it can't go on my numbers. It has to be in that window. And
okay,
in that window, like the last year, 98.17% of our students were employed or in grad school in
wow,
that window. And,
wow,
and I'm not here to talk about one really good year. We're talking 5 years now. We've averaged over 98%, and that even includes the COVID year. 98% of our players. I've seen universities take out billboards, put it alongside the road at 93, 94%. And I've actually had peers say, Jeff, you keep throwing around those numbers. Somebody's going to call you out someday, and you better have the documentation to back that. And we do. My associate director, she spends a significant amount of time, color coding where we found out, where they're at, the locations. And so I think it's a fair question. If I'm any type of education is a big investment. And I think what we're seeing is what's on the other end of this big investment.
yeah.
And so I think as far as who comes, who recruits, who hires them, how many are getting hired, I think that's important, whether it's a trade school, 2-year school, 4-year school, wherever it is.
Right. And that's eh, honestly, I would think all of these things that you've said, I would think that I would have already like strategically thought through that. And honestly, I can't say that I have, though it makes so much sense. So I'm sure that many of the moms and dads listening in are going the same way, like, oh, that makes so much sense. Why had I not thought that way? I want to ask you about a couple more things while we still have a few minutes left. One, I know that there's for a long time been a big priority on internships, but we're seeing more apprenticeships and stuff like that coming along. Important do you think internships, apprenticeships, other kind of real world on the job type experience are for our kids, both as they're kind of trying to figure out what they want to do, but also as they're preparing to go out and do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like I shared about the student that did the corporate internship in accounting and realized that's not what he wanted to do. So the more they can get out there, internships, shadowing, volunteering, summer jobs. I mean, just get out there where maybe they're doing a menial task, but they can see what that person's doing and go, I like that. That's what I want to do. Or they're maybe going along and seeing that and go, oh, that's not what I thought it was. That's what I don't want to do. And even when sometimes I meet with a junior and they're changing their major, and I'll say, okay, we can't go back and redo anything. Here we are today. Just be thankful the Lord has showed you that other major or the other majors isn't where He wants you. And like I tell people all the time, it's much better to get it right than to get it fast.
Yeah.
And I think some people just start coming up with something just to sort of get people off their back. If they get asked, "What are you going to do? Where are you going? Where are you going to college? What's your major?" And so I think it's really important for them to just get those practical experiences. Plus, if I'm an employer and I see somebody that's showed enough initiative to find a place to do something that I want to hire them to do, now it tells me that, oh, you know what you're getting into, that type of thing. So I just tell students all the time, you've got to have more than a degree and a GPA. Because any job you ever apply for, if your resume is the only one on the desk, you don't want that job. Because if it's good enough, you want it, somebody else is going to want it, and there's a stack. Everybody in that stack is going to have a degree and some big glossy GPA. I mean, the local jeweler who thinks they can be the accountant or the first grade teacher doesn't get in the stack.
Yeah.
So now you're in the stack, you've got this degree and your nice GPA. What are you doing through high school, college to move up into that stack, to show that employer that you're really interested? And then just building on what we've talked about before, it gives them a good indication. Yeah, yes, I do want to work in that world.
Yeah, yeah, that's such good advice and counsel. The other thing that I think factors into that is just how important are like the soft skills that we're trying to teach our kids and that our kids need to pick up, communication and the way they present themselves and stuff like that. How do those things factor into this equation of trying to actually go forward in your career?
They're essential. I do the senior seminar class for all our engineers. I do the business experience class for all of our business students, and I'll bring people in from corporate America, from Google to Procter and Gamble to J.P. Morgan Chase and different organizations, where now the students can hear directly from these people. And so that was one of the questions one day. What about the soft skills, hard skills? And I think what it is, sometimes the hard skills are maybe the thing that sort of gets your foot in the door, in certain areas, like engineering or accounting or pharmacy or those type of things. But then your ability to succeed and to advance is all based upon those soft skills. And one person in corporate America said he feels the soft skills are really more valuable even than the hard skills. He said, I've been doing this for 10 or 15 years, and I'm always learning new hard skills. And I can teach you hard skills, but I can't teach you soft skills. Your interpersonal skills, your ability to communicate, your eye contact, your handshake, to carry on a conversation. So he said, he's really looking for those type of things. And so, I think they're very, very essential. And we're even I've even seen some stats fairly recently where we think, well, the people in the STEM, areas, the science and math and engineering, how they do make so much more money than the other people. But they're saying if given some time, a lot of those people more in the liberal arts area actually end up turning out making more than some of those in the STEM area. That's yes, I think it's very valuable. Anytime they can, better those interpersonal skills, anytime they can pick up foreign languages, anytime they can have international mission type experiences, or just any type of international experiences, just to work with a wide range, diverse population, I think is screams volumes to an employer as they're looking at individuals.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we are almost out of time. I want you to tell us a little bit before we go about Cedarville and how does Cedarville actually approach these things? Because you've given us such good information, and I think it would be really good to hear concretely what that looks like, at least at the institution that you're at.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think even as parents are looking at schools, I think as there, you guys talked about, does the university value career services, or the future vocation and that type of thing? Is ask the question, maybe, how involved is the career services department in the curriculum of the university? Because I
Hmm.
think what happens many times, you have the high and mighty PhD faculty and you have the lowly staff over here, and there's this big chasm. And we really have crossed that chasm just from the standpoint that we figure every year probably about 86% of our students, career services will be a part of the curriculum, where
Wow.
that student is going to be embedded into the syllabi. Okay, you need to go to a career fair. You have to have your resume approved by career services. You have to have a LinkedIn account. You have to have a mock interview. There's something in there embedded in there. And so I think throughout their college career, I think we've really bridged that gap to, that 85% of our students were actually going to be a part of the curriculum, where I think that shows the faculty is buying into this, that this education is not an end in itself. It's just a means to an end. And if we're not preparing them, so anyway, I just think that's really important. And I think another thing too, as far as just are the services provided after graduation? Some universities do not provide services after graduation. Some will provide services for the first 6 months after graduation. Some people will charge for career services for their alum, older. I've had students graduate from med school contact me back and say, "Hey, I'm just applying now for residencies. The mock interview was so helpful. Could we redo that? Do some mock interviewing, even now, even as an alum." So those are things that I think Cedarville has done. They've equipped us. They've given us the location. We've bridged that gap, I think, really well between academia and career services. The services, they've equipped us to be able to serve alumni. They've given us an office. I have 4 full-time people and probably 60, 70 hours of student workers,
Hmm.
to do this. And I share with people all the time that, as I go to conferences, there's better career services people than me. But if it's one person and one student, how do they serve, them? But to be able to have the staff to do that, I think is really important. And if you ever do go to a school that doesn't have an emphasis on career services, that's not well staffed, maybe has one person, who's
Hmm.
that one person going to help? The one that shows up in the office. So go take advantage of it, use the resources that are available.
Yeah, and be forward thinking with that. I think so. I think all of us struggle with this, but I've seen it in my college kids, especially just because they're young. I mean, we forget how young they actually are. But there's so many things that they think may be a good idea, but to actually go through with it and make it happen isn't always the biggest priority. So I do appreciate your noting, no matter what size this team is, make it happen, get in advantage of what is offered while you have it, because this could be a huge resource for you as you go forward. So really appreciate your point on that.
Yeah, and just one thing real quick. I just really encourage you as a parent, homeschooling is not easy. It's not cheap. There's a lot of sacrifices being made to homeschool. I know we did 26 consecutive years we homeschooled. And I just want to encourage parents, you've invested a lot. Where's that child going to go to college? Are they going to go somewhere they're going to mock, ridicule, tear down everything you've been building for all those 16, 17, 18 years? or are you going to put them in a position maybe where they will build on the foundation you've laid? And so I just encourage you. I mean, most important, we'd love to have everybody at Cedarville, but more important, you're where the Lord wants you. But I think it's at least worth taking a look. And I know they'll provide $100 certificate or like reimbursement for gas just to come look at Cedarville, or $100 towards a plane ticket, or maybe it might be $200 toward a plane ticket. And that's in the school. That's over in the admissions area. But we're fairly close to the Ark and the Creation Museum, and a lot of homeschoolers. We're always looking for some type of field trip. Well, if you make a trip to the Creation Museum, we're only about an hour, 15 minutes away. Come on up, take a look, and we'll help reimburse some of your expenses. So I think it's definitely worth looking into. We have a lot of professional programs. We have every student in every major has a Bible minor. So they have 5 classes. We have daily chapel 5 days a week. Normally the president speaks on Monday. Another Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are basically, it could be a preacher, a faculty member, somebody from business, politics, sports, whatever, worship time. And then Friday is student government. There's a run where they have a chaplain and that type of thing. So, many of our graduates, they really do feel that's one of the highlights of their experience at Cedarville. And we're going to be very intentional as far as on the spiritual side, encouraging them to do missions, short-term missions, summer, spring break, Christmas break, that type of thing. That's one thing our president really encourages the students to, at some time during your college career. It's not mandatory, it's not required, but it's really encouraged from the top down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how can everyone find out more information about Cedarville in general? And then if there's a specific place for them to go to learn about college visits and who to coordinate with and that kind of thing. Can you tell us about that now?
Yeah, probably the best thing is just cedarville.edu. And then you can go there, you can click on admissions. You'll be assigned an admissions counselor that will work with you. I mentioned the career assessments. We do have an assessment. It's called My Plan. And we'll make that available to you. It's there's 4 assessments. One is free. The other 3 are about $10 a piece. If you put in this code, you can take all 4 for free. It's not God. It's not going to tell you what to do, but it just gets you thinking and exploring and what different options could be. Even if you take that test and say, hey, I'd like to visit with myself or another career coach, we'll be more than happy to invest that time. If you're on campus for a visit, we'd be happy to sit down and meet with you. So again, that's something that the Cedarville, like I said, we want you at Cedarville, but more importantly, we want you to be where God wants you to be. And if you can use that tool and that's helpful, and I don't know, you can maybe make that code available to them. So
absolutely. We'll put that in the show notes so that you're able to access that. We'll put links to Cedarville to make it as easy as possible. Jeff, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I've learned a lot. You've given us a lot to think about, and it's been a joy to talk to you as always.
Thank you. It's a privilege.
Well, and to everybody else, thank you guys for hanging out with us. I hope that this has given you a lot to think about and really a lot of hope. There are so many resources available. There's so many strategies that you can start implementing now with your kids to make sure that they are on good footing when they launch and get ready for that next step. So, learn more. Go to some of the links that we're going to give you in the show notes. Come to Teach Them Diligently. Hear Jeff speak. Talk to him directly. You will love that if you do. So I'm going to give you all of those links in the show notes, but we would love to see you at a Teach Them Diligently event. I'm sure Jeff would love to see you on campus at Cedarville. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to talking to you again real soon.